Hello, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World Talks. India's Foreign Minister Jaishankar is in Moscow and will meet on Thursday with his Russian counterpart Sergey Lavrov to discuss recent developments after the US decided to put 25% trade tariffs on imports from India. Will that talks focus on Ukraine? Well, Russia would also like to see another of its Asian allies, China, to secure future peace in the war-torn country. And to talk about it all, we're joined by Tomasz Obremski, resident fellow at the Casimir Pulaski Foundation. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, why are Russians trying to involve more countries, such as India, such as China, in peace negotiations?
I think there are more countries to list after Alaska talks. Donald Trump has called his European allies. Vladimir Putin called not only his Indian counterpart, but also more countries from the global south, Brazil, South Africa. So it shows that the perspective on this conflict...
but let me interrupt you here, because I also know that he called Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and many other countries such as Belarus, who are possibly not to act as security guarantors for Ukraine.
But we are not right now over-focused on that. We are focused on major players that played an important role in the world trade system. For example, the European Union recently has agreed on the Mercosur deal, which Brazil is a part of. We are currently negotiating a trade deal with India. And I think this diplomatic offensive of India is very much tied to what happened between them and the United States. So basically, we know back in April, Trump has announced big tariffs to basically the entire world economy. And he gave some later prolonged time to actually negotiate more favorable deals. He negotiated those deals with UK, with the EU, with certain Southeast Asian countries. However, with India, he failed to do so because basically this deal that US proposed to India was very much interrupting on the internal market, internal agriculture market for India, which couldn't be accepted for BJP, which couldn't be accepted for Modi, who is very much supported by farmers. India is largest democracy of the world. So what India is doing right now is, I would say, low-cost retaliatory action because they don't want to got into tariff fight with the United States by putting retaliatory actions. They still think that they have a time to negotiate a better deal. They're going to open their market to certain products. Indian market still remains very much closed to the foreign import, but at the same time they want to show that the geopolitical cost that US is going to play by actually making global South, India, China, more understandable towards Russian root causes of the conflict that have to be addressed. I think in the end we need to actually evaluate if those costs will not be higher for the United States than any economic deal that it can have with India.
Okay, I'll have then two following questions. First of all, isn't the US just pushing India straight into the arms of Russia by imposing this new tariffs? And another question would be, what is Russia willing to offer India in order to compensate it for its trade losses? We already know what it can offer. So basically, since 2022, here in the Western countries, we get used to say that Russia started to be a vassal state to China. It's a client state to China, that China dominates the Russian market. India, which is also export-based economy, wants some part of this pie. Russia needs some other markets to enter with technologies, to enter with the knowledge, to enter with the raw materials. So for Russia, India is a diversification from China. For India, Russian market is a big over 100 million people market that urgently needs more access to the global economy, which India can provide. Of course, we have this threat of secondary sanctions. They're gonna be imposed they have already been imposed, but they're gonna go into work in 7 days, extra 25%. So it will be 50 in total?
Yeah, 50 in total. But India thinks that it prefers to have a short-term higher tariffs rather than the long-term unfavorable deal. It's pretty easy right now in the current conditions to strike the deal, but it's going to be very difficult later to change those conditions. But also India is calling Americans and Western counterparts hypocritical about this issue, because not only India imports Russian gas, the gas is still entering European markets through various ways. India is one country, so it's easy to blame. In the EU, you have 27. Some goes through Hungary, some goes through the others. So it's not so easy to scapegoat anybody.
The scale is quite different.
The scale is, of course, different.
The sheer amount of gas India is buying is huge in comparison.
And it's benefiting on that.
Pardon me?
It's benefiting on that because it's following G7 legal price cap on Russian gas. So then it resells the gas to the other parts of the world. But on the other hand, many countries argue that since Europe cut itself from Russian gas, it had to enter new markets and redirect the flows of the hydrocarbons, increasing the prices. So many countries couldn't access those energy products anymore. And here India comes saying that, okay, we're going to provide this lost oil to the world and keeping the world economy afloat.
Let me quote Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov now. Moscow won't agree with collective security guarantees negotiated without Russia. Russia will accept if the security guarantees to Ukraine are provided on equal basis with the participation of countries like China, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. Now, does it mean that Sergey Lavrov really sees Chinese soldiers patrolling the border with Ukraine along with Americans and the British? And if that's the case, now, who is to protect whom and from what?
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of different interests in that case. I think Russia is trying to increase the stake. Right now, everybody plays the game Trump imposed. We have seen 2 days ago that the visit of European leaders to the White House, they promised some kind of security guarantees. We still don't know how many soldiers which countries are able to actually provide. We're talking about really abstract numbers. It seems that UK is reluctant to do so. France has very limited capacities. So it's a game who will convince Trump that the other part is not willing to sit to the negotiating table and calm down with their demands. I think for India and China, it will not be good for Europe to have them on the ground. So it's really a wake-up call once again for the European countries to put their actions where their mouth is and have their own vision for the end of this conflict instead of following the lead of the United States, which will not always be strategically aligned with Europe that is directly bordering this conflict, whereas United States have a big, great ocean, as Donald Trump says.
Right. But in any case, would it be better to have the Indian there or the Chinese?
You ask me as a Pole, as an expert.
I'm asking you as an expert, a Polish expert, of course.
Yes, I think it's strictly European regional conflict. But if other countries are willing to take part in such coalitions, Europe should remain open. But it's in the end, eventually, it's about Europe and Ukraine who are supposed to decide who will give guarantees to their security. Ukraine is having a very working relationship both with Beijing and New Delhi. The question is to what extent would that attract or distract American security guarantees. I would not be so optimistic as Minister Lavrov, but so far we are talking about a very abstract thing. Both countries have their own conflicts even between themselves. Right now we see some honeymoon right now between India and China. Finally, Modi is going to visit China after 7 years, but we need to remember that back in 2020 they had a border dispute where actually there were dozens of casualties on both sides, and this dispute remains unresolved despite the fact that even the defense minister recently was in China 2 months ago. Of course, this is also an opportunity where Donald Trump imposes sanctions on India Narendra Modi has an opportunity to strike some kind of a deal with China that will normally, in the usual condition, not be accepted by the Indian population because China is considered as some kind of adversary. Those two countries are adversaries. However, there is still some economic potential that can be explored. So this is a good momentum to seek by both countries.
You said that we were discussing abstracts, and in fact, it seems that Russia would do its best to torpedo any peace negotiations. Therefore, it seems like it needs its Asian partners just to back its narrative. But there's another interesting aspect of the whole situation. Do you think that India and China would be in fact interested in ending the conflict in Ukraine? Because, you know, many experts point to the fact that they profit from it, just like you said, via fossil fuels. But also China profits, you know, from preoccupying the US with the Ukrainian conflict, and therefore they are not active in the Pacific region and are not protecting Taiwan, at least in Beijing's eyes, as strongly as they could.
As Chinese Quad says, Asian Quad, every crisis is also an opportunity. And recently we have indeed seen a worrying sign from China that China was more ambiguous towards this conflict. But recently Wang Yi openly says that Russian defeat would not be in favor of China because for exactly the same reasons that you mentioned, that it preoccupies the United States in America. Even in America, you have two camps among the hawks. One camp says that we need to focus immediately on China. The other one says that first we need to defeat Russia, then we're going to have we can focus on China. So I think both countries have somehow accommodated to the situation, and a sudden ceasefire or sudden peace will again be something new that both countries will have to accommodate to. For India, I think India is also playing this game pretty nice. Many countries are worried about doing economic deals in trade with China, and India was taking benefit from that. Many countries had friends short, as it was said, to India, their production. They are benefiting from the Russian oil. They are sharing the perspective of the global South on this conflict. So I would say if they play that nicely, they can also indeed benefit from that. But they need to play on a lot of tables at the same time to keep in balance, and that's going to be diplomatically challenging.
On many pianos, yeah. It very much seems so. Tomasz Obremski, resident fellow at the Casimir Pulaski Foundation, expert in Asian, European politics. Security expert as well. I was our guest this evening. Thank you.
Thank you
very much. And thank you for watching, and stay with us for much more news and interviews here on TVP World.